So if you're wondering what this 500 million ship is all about, well, there was an article a couple of time ago in the Particle magazine called "The Researchers Identify Vulnerabilities in GPS Modules for Ship," and basically, researchers found that some of these, ship out there, they're equipped with GPS modules, so they can be tracked, and there is actually a risk that adversaries, I don't know, bears might be able to hack into those GPS modules and be able to track the ship in real time, which is obviously something the ship do not like. So well, in case you're wondering, this today is not one of those kind of presentations where researchers identify some vulnerability in one of these kind of devices. This is actually a different kind of presentation. So yeah, probably electric ship or androids that dream of those are maybe left best for another day. What this presentation today is about, it started with an article in the New York Times in December 2019 called One Nation Tracked. And this, for me, was a very, very interesting article. In essence, the New York Times, two of the journalists from New York Times were able to obtain a data set of a couple billion telemetry points. So they got this from allegedly kind of a whistleblower. And the data, for instance, included locations, in essence, for more than 10,000 smartphones that were being tracked as people walked in Central Park in New York. So for instance, one can just isolate one of those smartphones in there from their unique IDs, and then that ID basically can be used to identify pings from the smartphone over the entire period covered by the data. So you can actually see that smartphone moving around throughout New York City or even outside, pretty much revealing a diary of that person's life. So you can see maybe they go to grab their coffee from Starbucks, or I don't know, they go for lunch and have a pizza, or who are the relatives they're visiting, where they work, and so on and so on. Now, well, New York Times actually turned their attention to identifying people in positions of power because mostly the idea was that this data set was completely anonymized. So it should be impossible to identify who's there in the data set. So what they actually were able to do were able to identify and then track important people such as military officials with security clearances as they drove home at night, or they tracked law enforcement officers as they took their kids to school, or even high-powered lawyers and their guests that they traveled from private jets to vacation properties. So all of that being made possible by this database, this data set of in theory anonymized location data. Now, for instance, in one case, they were able to identify a person by the name Mary Melbourne. She's a singer from Virginia who performed for three presidents, including Trump. And like many of the people from this data set, she said she was very careful about limiting how she shared the location. Like many of them, she couldn't name the application that might have collected her location. So in other case, they, for instance, noticed a Microsoft engineer who made a visit to the Seattle campus of Amazon one day, and then the following month he started a new job at Amazon, and it basically took them minutes to identify him as Brent Broyley, who is now a manager for Amazon Prime Air, a drone delivery service. And all that was possible again from this huge set of anonymized information. So some of the companies who were in this the location data business, as identified by the New York Times, well, you can read some of the names of these companies over there. But in reality, there are actually a lot more. There's a lot more such companies out there. Now, what is, let's say, kind of interesting here? Well, as my former marketing director, so maybe about 25 years ago, I was speaking to the guy who was in charge of marketing at the company where I was working back then. And we were talking about something. I said, like, man, we have a problem with polymorphic malware. And he said, like, that's a wrong way to think about things, you know. He said, context matters. He said, contexto gravas. Context matters. There is actually no such thing as a problem. There's only a thing called opportunity. So we don't want to, let's say, talk about any kind of problems here. We want to be actually quite positive and talk about the opportunity. What is the opportunity with all this location tracking? So, looking a bit at the opportunities and risks that arise from this. So, for instance, there could be some positive uses, right? One could use, let's say, location data tracking to optimize traffic, just to build efficient transportation systems. So you see that maybe there's a lot of traffic jams in an area, then you build more bridges and you solve that problem. Or you can study epidemics, pandemics, disasters, and you can even test the efficacy of social distancing. Or even you can track criminals or identify crimes that are produced at certain hours in certain locations. So let's say we know that somebody got robbed in this particular location at 5 a.m., then we can just check location data and see who else was in the area at 5 a.m. Well, that can maybe in some cases help the law enforcement catch the criminals. But then there's also potentially negative uses such as tracking journalists and their sources, stalkerware, stalking celebrities, I guess, abuses, keeping tags on employees, or even what Shoshana Zuboff calls surveillance capitalism in her book. Um, More recently, she also talks about this in a documentary called The Social Dilemma. And obviously, we need to put everything in balance, the positive uses or the negative uses together. But one of the things which really caught my attention, you know, I was still thinking about this story from December 2019, when in March, at the very, let's say, early days, the beginning of the pandemic, I saw a very interesting video on Twitter. I'm gonna play that video for you, and let's take a look together and see what this is about.
We wanted to see the true footprint social gatherings like spring break beach crowds could really have on our society in the face of a global pandemic. To do so, we started with the big picture, powering our engine with billions of anonymized location data points from mobile devices across the globe. Using tectonics, we can then zoom in on specific regions. Here, we focus specifically on just one beach in Fort Lauderdale during the month of March. Again, each of these data points shown on the map corresponds to a unique mobile device active on a given day. You can see clearly that device activity spikes during the 2-week stretch of early to mid-March corresponding with spring break. No surprise. Now, using an analysis called a spider query, we can actually track movement of these devices over the remaining weeks of March, seeing where these devices went after spring breakers left the beach. As we zoom further and further out, it becomes clear just how massive the potential impact just one single beach gathering can have in spreading this virus across our nation. It can be hard for us to realize sometimes just how connected our world really is, until the data tells the stories that we just can't see.
So very interesting video, and obviously a couple of other people out there, you know, they were intrigued by this video. And the thing which attracted my attention was, of course, the capability to take, let's say, a set and a group of people and then track their movements over a couple of weeks throughout the country. And for instance, Colin Anderson was one of the researchers who replied and said, where do you get your location data? Are you the first party for any of these apps? And what are the specific methods for anonymization? And obviously his question was left unanswered. Now, if we look at the original tweet associated with this video, actually we see that they say through a partnership with something called Xmode Social. So now if we look back at the list of companies, a selection of companies working in the location data business as highlighted by the New York Times in their article, we can actually spot Xmode right there. So it's definitely Xmode Social appears to be one of these companies that are working in the location data business. And the data being collected from many different applications, smartphone apps that include your location, obviously is being sold by Xmode through this partnership to other companies such as Tectonics. So when I saw this immediately, I wondered if I am one of those little dots on that screen. Am I one of the dots? Obviously not in the States, but one of the dots in Europe, in Romania, because as you may have seen in the beginning of the video, they have a lot of data outside of the United States as well. So the question is, of course, if we, like you, me, everybody, are actually one of those little tiny dots. So I tried to investigate this. I went to their website, and there's actually a description of the Xmode network and how it works. They basically have an ad-free revenue. So that means that their SDK doesn't show you any annoying ads, and everybody knows that these ads are very, very annoying. Like you have an app on your phone, and every 15 seconds there's an annoying ad, and nobody likes that. So this is actually ad-free revenue, making it very, very attractive to mobile phone app developers. And they actually even have a monthly earning calculator. So you input the amount of daily users in the United States. I put 1,000 and global 1,000, and the total potential monthly revenue from an application installed like this would be $33, which makes us compute that the one user's privacy is worth about 3 cents per month if they are from the United States, and a bit less if they are from the rest of the world. Now, how it works, to be honest, this is all very, very transparent and open. You just have to install this efficient location collection software in the application, and then you just basically earn money. So at this point, my question was, how do I get this SDK? And there's an FAQ on their website. I'm gonna show this for you guys. There's a couple of questions in there, such as does the SDK impact the user interface? No, negative. It's all in the background, so it's completely invisible. You don't see it. Will it affect battery life? Just like typically 1% to 3%, almost invisible. Your phone will not like overheat or something. It's not very large. And the last question, which also attracted my attention, is this legal? The answer is most definitely. Apple, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat monetize on their data one way or another. So with our GDPR compliant SDK, we go above and beyond to make sure that everything is kosher. So this is definitely, again, legal and kosher according to the FAQ. So still trying to find this SDK. I did a bit of searching on Google, and I was lucky enough to find this GitHub. It's somebody's personal GitHub actually, and they have a piece of source code in there, which was found by my search. And I noticed that they initialize an object called Xmode SDK. So this actually made me, gave me an idea on how to try to search for this SDK. And the reason is obviously we want to be able to identify telemetry endpoints, so-called CNCs, to see if we have traffic to those from our own networks. So Xmode SDK.init being the method used to initialize this object. So I put together a small Yara rule. Remember, people claim that I play chess with Yara rules. So I do like Yara rules. I like Aristotle. So I put together a Yara rule called Xmode SDK, $A1 equals Xmode SDK, condition any of them, ran it on VT. And a couple of minutes later, I got 29 matches plus 500 pro. Um, well, those 29 were pretty, let's say, sufficient. So I just took the first match in there, which is the file with this particular hash. Well, this file was detected already by 3 antivirus engines, which is a bit interesting. And on a quick inspection, I noticed that the permissions on this application, they actually look very good. It's trying to access your course and find location, which effectively means it's reading your GPS coordinates, but also it tries to access network state, Wi-Fi state, so collecting other interesting information from your phone. So this is actually looking good. So I took my favorite analysis tool, which is actually Hue. I opened this file in Hue and looked a bit just to see what's in there. Immediately I spotted some base64 encoded strings right next to Xmode, because basically I couldn't find any URLs in this application or any domains that I could use. Now, these base64 strings, they did look interesting. I tried to decode them, but unfortunately they appeared scrambled. But to my eye, they appeared kind of scrambled with a very simple cipher. So I tried CyberChef, Soaring brute force, and it didn't take long to identify the encryption key, which was 09, and that decoded one of these to the following URL, atb.bearcloud.com. So I checked the who is for BearCloud. Well, it's created one year and a half ago, well, almost 2 years now. Who is privacy protected, so we don't really know who is behind it. If we visit the website, it's welcome to Nginx, which doesn't say much. But if we ping this endpoint, the one that is used for telemetry, actually there's a nice response from there, indicating that the endpoint is alive and complaining that the data parameter is null. And there's actually a very good research on BearCloud, by the way, from our colleagues at Checkpoint. They found this Haken clicker and Joker premium dialers using BearCloud. However, as interesting that is, it doesn't appear to be Xmode SDK, which is the one that we were interested in finding. Well, there was another string in there. This was, unfortunately, was encrypted, let's say, a bit better. This decodes to udata elephantdata.net. So if we visit this website, it's a company called Elephant Data, build a better business through big data, market intelligence solutions, app analytics, help you in the market. Sounds very, very cool and interesting, but still this is not Xmode SDK. So I kept searching. Next step, I decompiled the application. Then I noticed there's actually a class in there called Xmode SDK, and they do initialize it, meaning that we found pretty much this SDK that we were looking for. So I started looking a bit, trying to understand what happens in the initialization phase. I found there's a method there called send only using OKHTTP3, which actually has a very interesting URL in there, this URL here. And the kind of data which is being collected and posted to this URL includes, well, the altitude, latitude, longitude, bearing, time, speed, the accuracy of these measurements, as well as other interesting IP and network information, including like the Wi-Fi SSID and BSSID, which are all being sent to this telemetry endpoint. So in case you're wondering what we just did analyze, this was an application called Snowday Calculator. So there's a lot of these applications, by the way. In order, let's say, to mask the location collection, they need somehow to justify that. So in this case, basically it tries to identify your location, and then it will calculate the amount of snow that is expected for your particular location. Now, there's a few unhappy comments, like this guy here says that had this app installed for a while, but when he opened his phone this morning, it said the app was a virus. So not good. And then another guy complains the last storm was very inaccurate and the app hasn't been working part of the time to even calculate anything. So they are not very happy, let's say. Now, this some additional information. I guess the most interesting is the amount of installations. It has a bit over 5,000 installations. And just to summarize, there's Xmode in there collecting the location, but also there's Bear Cloud, there's Elephant Data, there's another thing called One Signal, and others that I'm not listing here. So just one single application and a bunch of different things. And why there's like all these different things in there? Because it basically doesn't cost anything to include even 100 of these toolkits, right? The battery is not affected because the notifications are all event driven. So it costs almost nothing to report to different location tracking companies and collect $33 from every one of them. There's nothing stopping developers from doing it. Now, I made a better Yara, so I put this particular telemetry endpoint in there, and now we see the difference, 2019 matches with 4,000 additional pro matches. So I downloaded those 2019 applications, which are Android APKs, and I was able to classify them as 240 unique application names, which they all include at least this SDK, but probably more. So what was interesting here for me, besides, was just to try to count the total amount of users worldwide running these 240 applications. So the Play .google.com actually has an API that allows you to retrieve this information. So I did a bit of scripting, AWK to the rescue, plus a bit of curl. So I fetched all the amount of installations and the amount of, well, the installs for all these different apps that I found, and I summed them together, and lo and behold, we have up to 500 million installations. Obviously, if all these are unique, so assuming that they are all unique, but probably the number is a bit smaller because some people might have 2, 3, even 10 maybe of these applications on their phone at the same time, which in my opinion is a staggering number. The probability to be one of those 500 million, well, you obviously you realize it's pretty high. Okay, so just some summary and conclusions. There's hundreds of free and paid smartphone apps which are linked to mobile SDKs. And if this is legal, well, remember the answer, most definitely. But they say, well, we can do a poll a bit later and decide on this. Now, this data can be used for good purposes. Don't forget that it can be used by law enforcement and so on, but obviously it can be used for other purposes. And one single application was linked to half dozen SDKs, and think profit, well, it's $33 multiplied by 6 or even more. And I think that COVID-19 tracing apps will likely increase and contribute to the location collection business. Pretty much all of these companies are in the business of collecting location data, and they all have some kind of COVID-19 panel or dashboard that you can buy access to see what's going on. Now, the fun part is that our story continues. So we don't stop there. There's probably more to this story here. And just to, let's say, better understand the struggle between that guy and the other guy, and whatever they're doing in this forum. Um, well, let's take a look at what Guardian Firewall said on Twitter quite recently. They actually spotted that Xmode Social, they changed the API endpoint. It's now API myendpoint.io. And well, it's pretty obvious that it's extremely easy to change this endpoint. Just distribute a new SDK with the new endpoint, and then whoever is tracking them will lose detections. And um, what is also quite interesting as a development, in September 2020, Ron Wyden and Elizabeth Warren, they sent a letter and a call for investigation in the case of IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, purchasing a subscription from one of these companies called Ventel in order to identify American people. So I think they paid about $476,000 in order to acquire access to this Ventel database, and then it just allows them to track people, let's say, by identifying where they live, by their homes, and so on. And the whole investigation obviously triggered, let's say, some people into taking a deeper look. So it was just announced like a few days ago. The IRS is now being formally investigating for using the smartphone location data without a warrant. So I find it kind of interesting here that they're being investigated for because they're using this without a warrant. But like in theory, anyone can purchase this data, right, or similar data and use it without a warrant. And there's basically no law which prevents a company from using such information. Let's say the IRS is kind of limited in the sense they cannot use this without a warrant, being a government organization. But again, this limitation doesn't apply to other companies. And in case of Ventel, there's hardly any information available. Wolfie Crystal actually posted a great thread in February of this year where basically Ventel is advertising 17 billion commercially available data points daily. So 17 billion data points per day coming from Ventel. And they also put together a paper, which is also very cool. I recommend you guys taking a look. Well, 10 smartphone apps secretly sharing personal information with at least 135 companies systematically breaking EU data protection law. So all very, very interesting. So at this point, I would like to do a poll and I'll ask for support. And I want to ask everybody, what do you guys think about the collection of location data from mobile phones? Do you think that location data, collection through hidden SDKs and then reselling it is legal? Is this legal in your opinion? The reality is that nobody knows for sure, I guess. It's unclear if this is legal or not, in the sense there's no laws which kind of govern this collection. So by, let's say, these laws or the lack of laws, it's neither legal or illegal. So it's kind of out there in the void. Nobody knows for sure. I think it would be good to have some laws which govern the collection of location data from everybody's phones. Now, in terms of solutions, there are some commercial solutions out there. For instance, Lockdown HQ, they have a solution for this, and Guardian is another solution. Both of them work, and I tested them myself, so this is something that you can use as well. But there's also another way, do-it-yourself solutions, which is what I'm using myself. In essence, a small mini computer running Pi-hole coupled together with a couple of lists, such as this one, github.com/cryomobile-trackers. And this allow you to identify trackers and the traffic associated with these hidden mobile location SDKs. So feel free to use this list in case you have Pi-hole. It works very well. Personally, for my phone, I coupled together with WireGuard because I want to make sure that it works even when I'm not at home. So just tunnel into a server of your own using WireGuard, set up a DNS there, and then you can control whatever happens on your phone. You know what is going on. So this was pretty much all that I wanted to share today. Thank you very much. There's no Easter egg in these QR codes, in case you're wondering. Um, there's one of them goes to my Twitter account, and the other one goes to the mobile trackers list on GitHub.
A lot of people said that those kind of applications and services should not be legal, but if they are free, then you, the human, are you are
Hmm.
the product. What do you think about this mentality?
I mean, well, there's not anything that I can say that Shoshana Zuboff didn't say in her book called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. So that's something I can recommend everybody to read. Obviously, there's the social dilemma, and that's also interesting. But in essence, like the FAQ was saying, all these companies need to find some way to monetize the information. So be it users' location, users' data, and so on. There needs to be some way to monetize, and that I guess is the issue. In order for these ecosystems to be stable, and in order to build um, humane ecosystems, advertising ecosystems, we do need some kind of laws and regulations, at least in my opinion.
How to prevent those who utilize cloud-based providers like Azure or
Mm.
AWS, and because they encrypt their connections and you don't know what it's used by trackers. Also, I will add that with the wide adoption of DNS over HTTPS or DNS over TLS, you can't really um, you can't really track, you can't really block.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that running your own DNS server is a way to go with the Pi-hole and a couple of lists. In my opinion, that's the most solid solution. Just be careful so that, like, the browser doesn't start using DNS over HTTPS by itself, and then you lose like all the magic. But in essence, I don't think there's any other better solution at the moment than this.